Why is this week's Torah portion, Tazria, she who conceives, or conception, given this title, if only the first few verses deal with a baby being born and what the mum has to do if it's a boy or a girl, sacrificing and circumcision and whatnot, but the vast majority of the Torah portion talks about leprosy, which, by the way, we don't know why it comes about. So why give a title which resembles only the first few verses of a Torah portion? Today is Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, and it reminds me of a story I once read. CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, won some award for business ethics, where he told the following story. He says, him and a bunch of CEOs were in Israel, and they were meeting various leaders, and one of these such was the spiritual leader, the head of Yeshivat Mir, the Rav Finkel Zal, the Tzal. And he says, we're waiting in this room 15 minutes. We don't know anything about this rabbi. All we know is he's 15 minutes late. And all of a sudden walks this rabbi. And he says he has the most horrific case of Parkinson's. And we all veer our eyes away. Immediately the Rav Finkel bangs his head on the table and says, look at me. He says, I know you guys are busy businessmen from America, so we'll make this quick. What did we learn in the Holocaust? Schultz says, everyone feels like they're in the 4th grade, no one knows what to say. One says never again. Another one says to never stand by like quiet bystanders. Rabbi Finkel says, you guys don't know anything. He says, I'll tell you what we learned in the Holocaust. We learned about the power of the human spirit. He says, when we arrived in the death camps, they brought us in like animals. And then when we arrived, we were taken to sleeping quarters. 6 Jews slept on a bed, but only one was given a blanket. Now, it's a horrific winter outside. We're only given one blanket, and the Jew given the blanket has to make a decision. Do I keep the blanket for myself and survive another night, or do I share it with the others? He says that's what we learned in the Holocaust. We learned how to make decisions like people, like human beings. Now go back to America, take your blankets, and spread them to another 5 human beings. Beautiful insight. When I look at this week's Torah portion, I think it's very symbolic, and it's if you like, God is a fine poet, the finest perhaps. You see, what a beautiful title, conception, right? A baby is born into a world. The first few verses, the introduction, the birth of this week's Torah portion is a boy or a girl come into the world, and a woman has to bring 2 sacrifices. The mother. One for atonement and one saying thank you. Now the Olah, right, the sort of positive one saying thank you makes sense, a baby's born. But why atonement? Atonement for what? Well, I connect this to the bulk of this week's Torah portion, which is about leprosy. You see, leprosy comes about for reasons that we do not know. However, there are some sages in the Talmud that tell us, Resh Lakish, he was a famous sage, used to be a pirate until he became one of the greatest Torah scholars. He says leprosy comes about for speaking bad words, for slandering. And I think it's symbolic to remind you that even though we say words and words are invisible, you get a physical mark. The person who slandered gets a physical mark from heaven to remind you that you might have said a few invisible words, but you cost a person perhaps his life or more than physical pain. Right? It's far, far worse. I think that the reason the mother brings the sacrifice for thank you is clear. The baby's born into the world. Sacrifice for atonement is saying sorry to that soul for coming into a world that is not an easy world, a difficult world. But these 2 sacrifices symbolize, on the one hand, you're coming into a difficult world, and for that I'm atoning. But on the other hand, we're bringing into the world another human spirit that hopefully, like many other human spirits in this world, will make the right decisions and be human beings. Shabbat Shalom.